I was always wondering where the circus went. Turns out, it was in Chicago the whole time.
Oh my. Oh my god, this is ridiculous. A Kobe Bryant patch autograph. Number 4 of 10.
How is it going, everybody? And welcome back to my channel, Kobe Cards. We are back again talking about the first 2 episodes in The Last Dance. If you haven't seen the first video but found this one by some chance, click the link I'm going to put in the video, and I will also leave it in the description to watch part 1 first to catch up. I think it'll be useful to check it out. To recap for those who did watch part 1, we talked about the interesting timing of the documentary, the unprecedented access that was given to the film crew, how Jerry Krause treated Phil Jackson, and how high school MJ would have fared against high school Kobe Bryant. With 7 topics left all for this video, let's just dive right in. First, there was the decision to go pro. This was super interesting because based on the story, Jordan actually wanted to go back to college for his senior year. It was his head coach at North Carolina who was like, dude, you cannot pass up the money at this point, especially if you're going to be a top 3 pick. Listen to me. Go pro. Do not come back here. According to Jordan, he wasn't even considering going pro until that point. Even after that, he was like, well, now I guess I'm 50-50. And his coach had to be like, seriously, do not come back. That was so different than Kobe's approach, even out of high school. In a way, I feel like Kobe had a lot more support and a lot more people helping him come to his decision to go pro. Kobe was quoted many times saying, people were even running up to me on the street telling me what to do. Everyone had an opinion. And that was Kobe's experience. He had a huge group of people in his corner, and then millions of people who he didn't even want in his corner were making their opinions known. It almost makes me wonder if they downplayed the role that Jordan's parents played in the decision, because his parents weren't even in that part of the documentary at all. Like, they didn't even mention if his parents approved of his decision to go pro or wanted him to go back to college for the last year. And that's a little odd, given that they featured Jordan's family quite a bit in the first 2 episodes. Next, we are going to talk about the 1984 NBA draft versus the 1996 NBA draft. So, in The Last Dance, obviously they showed Jordan getting drafted, and he was selected number 3 by the Chicago Bulls. And of course, you can't talk about the 1984 draft without making reference to the number 2 pick at the time, who was Sam Bowie. Bowie is considered widely to be the biggest bust in NBA history. And that is such a shame, because it must stink to always be that guy who was drafted right before Michael Jordan. If the Blazers picked Jordan instead of Bowie, and Bowie went 3rd, no one would be talking about it today, because naturally it happens where picks just don't pan out. But it's just the fact that he happened to be the pick before Michael Jordan, and that's what doomed his name. To recap though, Hakeem Olajuwon was the number 1 pick by the Houston Rockets, Sam Bowie was picked number 2 by the Portland Trail Blazers, and Michael Jordan went 3 by the Chicago Bulls. Other huge names in the 1984 draft include Charles Barkley, who went number 5 to the Philadelphia 76ers, John Stockton, who went number 16 to the Utah Jazz, and that brought that class of 1984 draftees to a total of 4 Hall of Famers. Now, the only class that many people would consider to be as good as or better than the 1984 NBA draft class is, well, you guessed it, the 1996 NBA draft class. I can name 12 players that you've probably heard of from this class alone. The class was led by number 1 pick Allen Iverson, and was filled out by number 3 Shareef Abdur-Rahim, number 4 Stephon Marbury, number 5 Ray Allen, number 6 Antoine Walker, number 13, Kobe Bryant, number 14, Peja Stojakovic, number 15, Steve Nash, number 17, Jermaine O'Neal, number 20, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, number 24, Derek Fisher, and Ben Wallace came out of this draft class and wasn't even drafted. Between the 4 Hall of Famers that this class has already, with Iverson, Ray Allen, Bryant, and Steve Nash, we also have Marbury, who's pending eligibility in the next few years too. And many people consider this not just to be the best draft class ever, but also the deepest. Between the 11 players who would end up appearing in All-Star games, the 8 All-NBA team players, the 3 MVPs that they hold a lot of records across the board for any year. Since I want to be consistent and all, and since we brought up Sam Bowie, I thought why not talk about the person who got picked right before Kobe Bryant in the number 12 spot. It was none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Vitaly Potapenko from Ukraine to the Cleveland Cavaliers. In a last video, I mentioned the irony of if Jordan demanded to play under Phil Jackson, then he could have been a Laker. But could you imagine if Kobe Bryant was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers? That would have changed a lot of things for the entire history of the NBA. Needless to say, it could have even created a potential cascade that doesn't land LeBron James in Cleveland. And LeBron James, who is known as the face of the Cavaliers, who knows? That could have been Kobe. Oh, and by the way, as rumors would have it, Potapenko is even worse than Bowie. Shh. Next on the list, I want to touch briefly on the Bulls organization at the time Jordan was drafted. One of the things that I learned is that people didn't respect the Bulls or even really buy Bulls tickets to go to their games, compared to the other Chicago teams, until they were suddenly good during the Jordan era. I thought it was funny how even President Obama made an appearance saying, yep, the Bulls were trash, mostly irrelevant. And for Jordan, it's very cool how he gets to be one of those players who defines an entire franchise. When you think of the Chicago Bulls, you think of Michael Jordan. The two just go hand in hand. In the future, and even now, when you think of the Cleveland Cavaliers, you're going to and already do think of LeBron James. There is not a single Hall of Fame player who played for the Cleveland Cavaliers for more than 3 years. So, yeah, he gets to define that franchise. Dirk pretty much has that for Dallas. Reggie Miller has that with the Pacers. And the Miami Heat are known for Alonzo Mourning and Dwayne Wade. Minnesota now has Kevin Garnett. There are a handful of franchises that really only have 1 or 2 guys that really stick out in terms of massive historical significance for those teams. As for Kobe, though, this is not a box that he'll really ever get to check. And that's okay, but from a historical perspective, Jordan really gets a lot of love for defining the franchise. And quite honestly, the entire attribution of the totality of the success that the Bulls had can really go to him, dating back to their entire history. The Lakers, however, have 17 Hall of Famers who were with the franchise for at least 4 years, and 26 inductees into the Hall of Fame have played for the Lakers. Compare this to like the Timberwolves, for instance, and they're getting their very first inductee this year in Kevin Garnett in the entire history of the franchise. Thus, because of big names like Jerry West, Jamal Wilkes, James Worthy, Elgin Baylor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe's success doesn't define the entire franchise. And he can't be the only name you think of if you want to truly pay respect to the Lakers organization. You have to respectfully bring in all those other names. If you were to ask Kobe, though, that really wouldn't have bothered him because Los Angeles was really the only franchise that he dreamed his entire life of playing for. And it was a dream come true for him every single night to play for the Lakers. All right, the circus. I'm not actually going to spend too much time on this, or even really talk about this in a non-family friendly way. But one thing I do want to say is that I obviously respect players like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, who are willing to say no to peer pressure and focus on keeping their minds and bodies locked in on the greater picture. One of the things that I loved learning about Kobe, for example, was that he was super meticulous about everything that went into his body. Every single meal was carefully considered and planned out, such that he got exactly what he needed for his training or recovery, or whatever it may have been. I guess it just goes to show you that if you truly want to be the greatest, you have to make sacrifices, and you can't always choose the easy path. Both Jordan and Kobe passed these tests. For Kobe, resisting temptations was even harder because when he entered the league, he wasn't even legal drinking age yet. He wasn't even close. He was 17. He just barely was allowed to see R-rated movies. A lot of people at that age aren't even fully able to make the most rational or mature decisions for themselves because they're still learning a lot about themselves and the world. But luckily for both Kobe and Jordan, not a problem. Moving on. Siblings. I wanted to touch on this quickly because I thought it was interesting how Jordan recounted that he was chasing his brother Larry for his father's attention, especially in the basketball world. It was like it took Jordan until his college days for him to finally step out of his brother's shadow, which again is so interesting because Larry Jordan wouldn't end up going pro or having much of a basketball career at all. You may have recalled that Jordan wasn't selected to the varsity basketball team in high school until he was a junior. However, Larry, his brother, who was only 11 months older than him, was on the varsity basketball team when Jordan wasn't. So, unlike Jordan, who was the fourth of 5 children in the family and the youngest of 3 boys, Kobe grew up as the only boy in his household. He had 2 older sisters, but they didn't really get in the way of Kobe bonding with his father over basketball growing up. He was the only son, and he didn't really have to compete for his father's attention in the way that Jordan did. And I find that super interesting. Maybe that has a little bit to do with Kobe being better from a younger age, that he was favored by his father, whereas Jordan wasn't getting that level of attention. All right, moving on to Scottie Pippen. I do want to make sure that I give Scottie just a few sentences as well, mainly because I think it's really important for everyone to remember every once in a while that these athletes are in a business where they do have to make some pretty major sacrifices. Yes, they make a ton of money to do so, but it's pretty deep sacrifice as well. One of which is that players don't always have the luxury of being with their families on a daily basis. And another is you can't necessarily choose where your home is. Sometimes where you play is not determined by you. There is a lot of value to players knowing that they're not on the trading block. These athletes oftentimes are making sure that they know which school their kid is going to, who their kid's friends are, making sure that in the area they're establishing relationships with doctors, dentists, other caregivers. The list goes on. You establish yourself within a community. And it can be incredibly stressful to live every day knowing that you may have to pick everything up on the drop of a dime and move your entire family to a different city or a different state completely. This means putting your house up for sale, packing all your boxes, moving, and everything that goes along with it. I can understand why Pippen took it so hard. And on top of all of this, he wasn't even making good money. 122nd in the league and 6th on his own team in terms of salary, when the only people who really should have been making more than him, especially on his own team, was Michael Jordan. The closest thing that I can think of in terms of the emotional tension, in a Lakers fan perspective at least, was the famous deal that would have landed Chris Paul and the Lakers. Once it was nixed, Lamar Odom was so personally hurt to found out that he was being traded after the deal was made that he ended up being so upset when it didn't go through and ultimately demanded a trade because he felt so hurt by the Lakers organization that he couldn't see himself being happy there anymore. All of the trust that he had in the organization was lost. And that just goes to show a little bit about how personal and emotional that the business side of the basketball world can be. Last, but certainly not least, is the foot injury. When Jordan returned from his foot injury, Jerry Krause put Jordan on a strict 7 minutes per half minutes restriction. And this was eventually bumped up to 14 minutes per half, which is still 28 minutes for the game. But this fueled a lot of frustration for Jordan towards Jerry Krause. Honestly, there is no clear-cut answer to this. Do you let him play those extra 13 seconds? I mean, it's only 13 seconds. But Krause said he would fire coach Stan Albeck on the spot if he didn't take Jordan out. Then Jordan threw management straight under the bus, saying that he wasn't sure if the Bulls were trying to tank their entire season because of this. And I'm going to give you two sides of this story. First off, Michael Jordan was wrong to demand to get back into the game. At some point, you have to listen to the doctors, listen to the medical staff and the training staff, and know your limits and trust that other people want to protect you. It was for his own health at the end of the day. And he's an investment and an asset of the Bulls that the Bulls would want to protect for the long term. Jordan was wrong to disrespect the management the way he did, to cuss out Krause and everything along those lines. And even worse, he was very wrong to go behind everyone's backs, including the management and the entire organization and the doctors, and train independently to try to heal himself faster. Like, that doesn't make him look very good to me. I don't know necessarily what they were trying to get out of that part from the filming, but I wouldn't feel good looking back on that, knowing that Michael Jordan just completely disobeyed what many people were considering to be in his best interest. On the other hand, Krause was also wrong in the way that he handled himself and the situation. To tell someone that they'd lose their job over 1 second is a little ridiculous. It disrupted the flow of games, and the way that he did it was irresponsible. And yeah, at that extent, it surely could have looked like tanking. A lot of coaches these days, they'll make statements like, yeah, we're going to try to keep this player around the 10 to 12 minute mark, or we're aiming for 25, but if he's feeling a certain way, we're going to keep that line of communication there. The problem was, there was no communication. Jordan didn't communicate with the Bulls what he was up to, and Krause didn't do a good job of communicating his priorities with Jordan either. And it goes both ways. Neither of them were right, in my opinion. Now, the saddest reality of what I'm going to compare this to is Kobe's torn Achilles. I remember vividly in April 2013 being scared on a nightly basis that Kobe was going to get hurt. This wasn't a freak thing out of nowhere. Every time Kobe got hit going to the rim or went down or landed awkwardly, I kept thinking to myself, oh gosh, man, just please get up, please be okay. He was pushed to a point where no other player has been pushed. In that month of April, he averaged 45.2 minutes per game, and none of those games went to overtime. 2 days before the injury, he had played all 48 minutes of the game, every single second of it. And it was on a back-to-back game. He had played 41 minutes the night before, and then the next night comes out and plays all 48 minutes. A lot of players these days, even if they're totally healthy, take nights off on backs-to-backs. Yet, Kobe was like, nope, I'm good, don't even let me rest. And then it was 2 days later that he again is playing every single second of the game. And it was 45 minutes into the game with just 3 minutes left, where, for me, it was seeing the strongest man in the entire world in my eyes suddenly become human. All he wanted to do was win so bad. He wanted it so gosh darn bad that he put his health and the rest of his career at risk. Everyone at home knew what he was doing. We all knew how bad he wanted it. But once it happened, what do? Do you blame Kobe? Do you resent him for trying his hardest and wanting to make the playoffs so bad that he refused to take a single second off? Do you resent the coaches and the owners and administration for not being more responsible? Who is to blame? Who was wrong when Jordan didn't play those last few seconds? Was Jordan wrong? Was Coach Stan Albeck wrong? Was Krause wrong? Well, then answer me this. Was Kobe wrong? Was Coach Mike D'Antoni wrong? Was GM Mitch Kupchak wrong for letting this happen? Who was wrong? Seriously, who was wrong? Leave a comment. I would love to know in either situation, Jordan or Kobe's, or both. If something like that can lead to so much frustration and destroy a relationship in the Jordan and Krause situation, well then, someone must have been wrong, right? I look forward to hearing all of your thoughts on those scenarios. Because, let's be honest, trying to restrict someone's minutes, yeah, it's a very touchy subject, but the health of your players is also super important. And with that, we end our recap of the first 2 episodes of The Last Dance. If you enjoyed this video and want to support my ongoing tribute to Kobe, I hope you consider subscribing so that you can follow along as we continue our journey to remember and celebrate the life and career of Kobe Bryant. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.